The hospital fired me on a Tuesday morning right after I reported Dr. Harrison for falsifying patient records. My nursing license hung by a thread and my reputation, completely shattered. I sat in my studio apartment that afternoon, staring at rejection emails from every clinic within a 50-mile radius, wondering if my career was officially over at 26. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Brennan Cole? A crisp, professional voice. This is Elite Care Agency. We have an urgent placement opportunity that matches your qualifications. The client is offering triple your previous salary, full benefits and accommodation included. However, there's one non-negotiable requirement: you must live on site. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Triple salary? For what, babysitting a spoiled rich kid? I almost laughed. But my empty bank account and mounting student loans made me swallow my skepticism. What's the situation? Mr. Damon Callaway needs a dedicated nurse for his son. I'll email you the details. He wants to meet you tonight, 8 o'clock sharp. Don't be late, he doesn't tolerate unprofessionalism. The call ended before I could ask more questions. That evening I stood outside a downtown penthouse building that probably cost more than I'd earn in 10 lifetimes. The doorman escorted me to the private elevator, which opened directly into the residence. My breath caught as I stepped inside floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Minimalist furniture that screamed expensive taste and a silence so profound it felt suffocating. A woman in her 50s, dressed in a housekeeper's uniform, greeted me with a tight smile. Mr. Callaway is waiting in Lee's room. Follow me. Lee's room. So the kid had a name. We walked down a long hallway, past framed photographs I didn't have time to examine. She stopped at a closed door, knocked twice and pushed it open without waiting for a response. Nothing prepared me for what I saw. Medical equipment dominated the space: monitors, IV stands, a ventilator humming quietly in the corner. In the center, a hospital bed held a small figure, a 7-year-old boy with pale skin, dark hair and closed eyes. Bandages wrapped around his forehead. Tubes connected him to machines that beeped in steady rhythm, counting every breath, every heartbeat. This wasn't a special needs case. This was a coma patient. You're early. I turned toward the voice. A man stood by the window, backlit by city lights. Tall, easily 6'2", with broad shoulders beneath a tailored shirt. As he stepped forward, his features sharpened. Angular jaw, dark eyes that assessed me with unsettling intensity, and an expression carved from stone. Damon Callaway looked like someone who'd forgotten how to smile years ago. I value punctuality, I replied, forcing myself to meet his gaze despite my racing heart. Mr. Callaway, I'm Brennan Cole. The agency sent me. You look young. His tone wasn't accusatory, just factual. Cold. How old are you? 26. But I have 4 years of ICU experience and specialized training in neurological care. I straightened my shoulders. Age doesn't determine competence. For the first time, something flickered in his eyes. Maybe approval, maybe just irritation. He gestured toward a chair. Sit. We need to discuss expectations. I sat, acutely aware of his presence as he moved to stand beside his son's bed. His hand hovered over the boy's small one, then withdrew, as if he couldn't bear the contact. Lee was in a car accident 4 months ago, he began, voice devoid of emotion. Traumatic brain injury. The doctors induced a coma initially, but even after they tried to wake him, he didn't respond. They say his brain shows activity that he might hear us, process information on some level, but he won't wake up. He handed me a thick folder. Medical records, therapy schedules, medication lists, dietary requirements, everything meticulously organized. I've hired 7 nurses before you, he continued, all highly qualified. All gave up within weeks because they treated him like a medical case, not a person. I don't need someone to just monitor machines and change IVs. I need someone who will fight for him. Talk to him, read to him, hold his hand, make him want to come back. The desperation underneath his controlled tone hit me harder than any plea could have. This man, this CEO who probably commanded boardrooms with ease, was drowning, clinging to the last shred of hope that someone could save his son. What makes you think I'm different? I asked quietly. You reported unethical behavior knowing it would destroy your career. He finally looked at me directly, That tells me you have principles, that you care more about doing what's right than protecting yourself. That's what Lee needs. Someone who cares. I glanced at the boy Lee. His chest rose and fell with mechanical precision. Beneath the bandages and tubes, I could see traces of the child he'd been, a spray of freckles across his nose. Long eyelashes, small hands that should have been holding toys or drawing pictures. Something tightened in my chest. I'll do it, I heard myself say. I'll take the position. Relief washed over Callaway's face so quickly I almost missed it. Your room is across the hall. Mrs. Chen will show you. You start tomorrow at 6 a.m. I'd like to start tonight, if that's all right. I stood, moving closer to Lee's bedside. If he can hear us, consistency matters. The sooner I establish a routine, the better. Callaway studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Mrs. Chen will bring your things from the car. He turned to leave, paused at the doorway. Brennan. Yes? Thank you. The words seemed to cost him something. For not running when you saw what you were getting into. After he left, I pulled the chair closer to Lee's bed and sat down. The machines beeped their monotonous song. Outside the windows, the city glittered with a million distant lives continuing as normal while this child lay suspended between worlds. I reached out carefully and wrapped my fingers around his small, cool hand. Hey Lee, I whispered. My name is Brennan, but you can call me Ren if that's easier. I'm going to be staying here with you for a while. I know you probably can't hear me, or maybe you can but just can't respond yet. That's okay. Either way, I'm going to talk to you. A lot. Fair warning, I'm not great at storytelling, but I'll figure it out. His hand lay motionless in mine. No flutter, no twitch, just the steady beep of the heart monitor. Your dad loves you very much, I continued, throat tightening unexpectedly. I can see it in his eyes, even though he tries to hide it. He's scared, Lee, really scared. And I think he needs you to come back just as much as you need to wake up. So we're going to work on that together. Okay? You and me. We're going to fight this. The city lights blurred slightly. I blinked hard. I promise you, Lee. I'm not giving up. Not on you. Not on this. We're going to bring you back. Silence answered me. But somewhere in that silence, beneath the mechanical breathing and electronic beeping, I felt something shift. Maybe it was just my imagination. A desperate need to believe this wasn't hopeless. Or maybe, just maybe, a little boy in a coma heard someone promise not to abandon him. Either way, my life had just changed completely, though I didn't know yet how deeply this job would transform me, or how much I'd come to care about both the boy in the bed and the broken man who refused to let him go. My first week became a blur of vital checks, medication schedules, and one-sided conversations. I talked to Lee constantly about everything and nothing. The weather outside his window, the birds that landed on the balcony railing, random memories from my own childhood, anything to fill the oppressive silence. So there was this patient once. I said on my third morning, adjusting Lee's pillow while monitoring his oxygen levels. She woke up from a coma after 2 years and immediately asked for pizza. Not water, not her family, pizza. The doctors were baffled, but her husband rushed out and got her a large pepperoni. Sometimes the brain wants what it wants, right? No response. Just the steady rhythm of machines. Damon rarely entered during the day. I'd catch glimpses of him leaving for work before dawn, returning after midnight. But I knew he listened from the hallway. I'd see his shadow under the door, hear the faint rustle of his suit as he stood there, silent and invisible. On the 5th night, I was reading aloud from a children's adventure book when the door opened. Damon stepped inside, still wearing his work clothes, tie loosened, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. Don't stop, he said, settling into the chair opposite mine. Keep reading. I continued the story, hyper-aware of his presence. When I finished the chapter, I closed the book and glanced at Lee's monitors. Everything's stable. How long have you been standing outside? I asked. Does it matter? He leaned back, rubbing his eyes. You know I'm there. It would mean more if you came in. Talk to him yourself. His jaw clenched. I can't. Why not? Because every time I look at him like this, I see the accident. The words came out harsh, jagged. The other car running the red light. The sound of impact. Lee's scream cutting off mid-breath. His blood on my hands while I pulled him from the wreckage, begging him to stay awake, to hold on just a little longer. The raw pain in his voice froze me. The doctor said I made the right choices, he continued, staring at his son, that my quick response saved his life. But what life? He's trapped in there and I put him in that car. I was driving, it should have been me. Survivor's guilt won't help him wake up, I said carefully. Lee needs you present, not drowning in what-ifs. How am I supposed to be present when I can't even touch him without falling apart? I stood, moved around the bed until I was beside Damon's chair. Start small, hold his hand. Just for a minute, you don't have to say anything. He looked up at me and for the first time I saw past the CEO facade to the terrified father. Underneath, what if he doesn't want me near him? He's your son. Of course he wants you near him. Slowly, hesitantly, Damon reached out. His hand trembled as it hovered over Lee's. When their skin finally made contact, his breath hitched. He closed his eyes, shoulders shaking with suppressed emotion. I stepped back, giving them space. I'm here, Damon whispered. So quietly I almost didn't hear. I'm so sorry, Lee. I'm here. We stayed like that for 20 minutes, father and son connected by touch. Machines humming their vigil, city lights casting shadows across the room. When Damon finally pulled away, his eyes were red but dry. Thank you, he said, voice hoarse. Don't thank me. Just come back tomorrow and do it again. He nodded, stood, straightened his tie with mechanical precision. At the door he paused. Brennan, why are you really doing this? It can't just be the money. I looked at Lee, at his peaceful, sleeping face. Because someone should fight for him. And if you can't right now, then I will. Until you're ready. After Damon left, I returned to my chair. Suddenly exhausted. These emotional marathons drained me more than double shifts ever had. Your dad is trying, Lee, I murmured, taking the boy's hand again. He's broken right now, but he's trying. That counts for something, doesn't it? People think strength means never falling apart, but real strength is falling apart and still showing up the next day. As I spoke, I felt it, the tiniest flutter against my palm. So subtle I thought I'd imagined it. My heart stopped. Lee, I leaned closer, pulse racing. Did you just move? Can you hear me? Nothing. The monitors showed no change. No spike in heart rate, no shift in brain activity. I waited, barely breathing, hand still wrapped around his. If you can hear me, if you're in there somewhere, do that again. Please. Just a little movement. Anything. Seconds stretched into minutes. My excitement faded into doubt. Maybe it had been a muscle spasm. Involuntary reflex. Coma patients experience those sometimes. But as I sat there in the semi-darkness, Lee's small hand in mine, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. Some imperceptible shift in the energy of the room. Like the moment before dawn when night begins releasing its hold on the world. Okay, I whispered. Maybe I imagined it. But I'm going to believe you heard me anyway. I'm going to keep talking, keep reading, keep holding your hand. Because even if there's only a 1% chance you're listening, that's enough for me. I stayed awake until sunrise, watching Lee's face for any sign of consciousness. His eyelids remained closed, his breathing unchanged. Yet I couldn't escape the conviction that somewhere behind those closed eyes, a little boy was fighting his way back to the surface. And if he was fighting, then I had to fight harder. The next morning, exhausted but determined, I documented everything in Lee's medical log. Time, date, location of the potential movement, circumstances surrounding it. The head nurse at the previous hospital had taught me that detailed records could reveal patterns invisible to casual observation. If Lee was trying to communicate even in the smallest way, I was going to catch it. Damon appeared at noon, unusual for him. He carried 2 coffee cups, handed me one without a word. We stood side by side, watching Lee sleep. Did anything happen last night? He asked. After I left, I hesitated. Should I mention the possible movement? Get his hopes up when it might have been nothing. Tell me, Damon pressed, reading my hesitation. Whatever it is. His fingers moved. Just barely, just for a second. It might have been a reflex, or it might not have been. Hope flickered across his face, fragile and devastating. What were you saying when it happened? I was talking about you. About how you're trying even though it's hard. Damon's expression shifted. Something vulnerable and exposed. He responded to hearing about me? Maybe. I don't know for certain. but I documented it, and I'm going to keep monitoring for any similar responses. I sipped the coffee, grateful for the caffeine. We might be seeing the beginning of something. Or we might be desperate people seeing patterns where none exist. Even desperate hope is still hope. He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw the mask crack further. You actually believe he'll wake up, don't you? This isn't just a job to you. No, I admitted. It stopped being just a job about 3 days ago. The morning after Lee's first potential response, I burst into his room the moment Damon arrived, barely containing my urgency. He'd just shed his coat, morning stubble shadowing his jaw, when I cornered him. Last night Lee moved his fingers, I said rapidly. I was talking about how much you miss him, describing your morning coffee routine, and his fingers definitely twitched. Not a spasm, a response. Damon's eyes widened. You're certain? As certain as I can be. It happened twice more throughout the night, always when I mentioned you specifically. He crossed to Lee's bedside in 3 strides, gripping the bed rail. Show me. Do exactly what you did. I positioned myself beside Lee, taking his hand gently. Lee, your dad is here. He comes every morning before work now, even though he's exhausted. Yesterday he brought you fresh flowers. Those yellow ones on the windowsill. He remembers you love yellow. We both stared at Lee's hand. Nothing. Keep going, Damon urged. He was telling me about this time you went to the zoo and you got scared of the elephants. Started crying until he bought you cotton candy and told you elephant jokes until you laughed. There. A definite flutter. Lee's index finger curled slightly inward, then relaxed. Did you see that? I breathed. Damon's face transformed. He heard you. He actually heard you. His voice cracked. Lee, if you can hear me, move your fingers again. Please, son. Show me you're fighting. We waited. Seconds felt like hours. The machines beeped their indifferent rhythm. Then unmistakably Lee's thumb twitched. Damon's knees buckled. He caught himself on the bed rail, shoulders heaving. He's in there. He's still in there. I documented everything immediately. Exact times. Which fingers moved. What triggered the responses. The neurologist arrived within an hour, summoned by Damon's frantic call. Dr. Pierce examined Lee thoroughly, reviewed my notes, adjusted monitoring equipment. This is promising, she said carefully. But I want to manage expectations. Reflexive movements can occur in coma patients without indicating consciousness. However, the pattern you've described, consistent responses to specific verbal stimuli about his father, that's worth investigating. What do we do? Damon demanded. Continue exactly what you're doing. Talk to him, especially about familiar people and positive memories. I'll order additional EEG monitoring to track brain activity correlation with these movements. She glanced between us. You've done excellent work here, Mr. Cole. This kind of detailed observation is rare. After she left, Damon turned to me with an intensity that made my breath catch. Change your approach. I want you to talk about me constantly. Tell him everything, what I eat for breakfast, what I'm working on. Stupid things I do. Make me real to him. Damon, I don't care how it sounds. If hearing about me brings him back, then use me. Use every memory, every story, every detail. So I did. I narrated Damon's life like a documentary. How he organized his desk with obsessive precision. The way he argued with the coffee maker every morning when it didn't brew fast enough. His habit of standing at Lee's window at midnight, just watching the city. Your dad is terrible at cooking, I told Lee one afternoon. Mrs. Chen says he once tried making pancakes and set off the smoke alarm. But he keeps trying because you used to love weekend pancakes. Lee's fingers twitched. He works too much, you probably know that already. But last night he left a meeting early to come sit with you. Didn't say anything, just held your hand for an hour. Another movement, stronger this time. Days blurred together. Lee's responses grew more frequent, more pronounced. His fingers, then his wrist, then incredibly a flutter of his eyelids that made my heart stop. The medical team was cautiously optimistic. Brain activity scans showed increasing engagement during my storytelling sessions. Dr. Pierce called it remarkable progress for a 4-month coma patient. But it was the night Lee's eyelids fully fluttered that everything changed. I'd been reading a story about a father and son climbing a mountain when Lee's eyes moved beneath their lids. Rapid, purposeful movements. Damon, I shouted, knowing he was in his study. "Get in here." He arrived at a run, hair disheveled like he'd been pulling at it. "What happened?" "Watch." I leaned close to Lee. "Your dad just got here. He's wearing that blue shirt you always said made him look like a superhero." Lee's eyelids fluttered. Once, twice, 3 times. Damon made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. He collapsed into the chair beside me, reaching for Lee's other hand. "I'm here, Lee. Papa's here. Keep fighting, baby. Keep coming back to me." The fluttering intensified. For one impossible moment, I thought Lee might actually open his eyes. But they remained closed, though the activity continued for nearly 30 seconds. When it finally stopped, Damon was crying openly, silent tears streaming down his face while he gripped his son's hand like a lifeline. I stood to leave, give them privacy, but Damon's free hand shot out and caught my wrist. "Stay," he said hoarsely. "Please. You're part of this now." So I stayed, sitting on Lee's other side, completing our strange triangle of hope and desperation. The city lights painted everything in shades of gold and shadow. Machines hummed their eternal song. "How did you do this?" Damon asked eventually, eyes still on his son. 7 nurses before you couldn't reach him. "What makes you different?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe I just refuse to see him as a lost cause. Or maybe you have something they didn't." He looked at me then, and the intensity in his gaze made my pulse stutter. Genuine compassion. Real investment. "You actually care what happens to him, to us." The word "us" hung in the air, heavy with implications I wasn't ready to examine. "He's easy to care about," I said softly. "Both of you are." Damon's thumb traced an absent pattern on my wrist where he still held it. He seemed unaware of the touch, but I felt every point of contact like electricity. "When this started, I hired you because I was desperate," he said. "Now I can't imagine facing this without you. You've given me something I thought I'd lost forever, hope. And more than that, you've reminded me how to be human again. How to feel something other than guilt and grief." "Damon, I know this is inappropriate. You're Lee's nurse. I'm your employer. But I need you to understand what you've done for this family. You've saved us. Not just Lee, both of." My heart hammered against my ribs. The space between us felt charged, dangerous. Professional boundaries blurred into irrelevance under the weight of shared trauma and emerging connection. "We should focus on Lee," I managed, gently extracting my wrist from his grip. "He's responding. That's what matters." But even as I said it, I knew the truth. Something fundamental had shifted between Damon and me. We'd crossed an invisible line, and there was no going back to simple employer-employee dynamics. Lee chose that moment to move again. His whole hand this time, fingers curling as if trying to grasp something just out of reach. We both lunged forward, hope and fear tangled in our chests. "We're here," Damon whispered. "Both of us. We're right here, son." And in the quiet that followed, with Lee's small hand between both of ours, I realized I'd stopped fighting for just a patient's recovery. I was fighting for a family, one that was somehow becoming mine, whether I'd intended it or not. The walls I'd built around my heart were crumbling, and I had no idea how to stop the fall. 2 weeks after Lee's eyelids first fluttered, the medical team reduced his ventilator support. His lungs were strengthening, breathing more independently with each passing day. Physical therapy sessions intensified, range of motion exercises to prevent muscle atrophy, gentle stimulation to encourage neural pathways to reconnect. But as Lee's condition improved, something else shifted in the penthouse. The air between Damon and me grew thick with unspoken tension, crackling like electricity before a storm. He started appearing late at night, long after his usual visits. Sometimes he'd claim he needed to review Lee's latest charts. Other times he'd say he couldn't sleep and wanted to check on his son. But we both understood the truth. These weren't visits motivated solely by paternal concern. Damon would settle into the chair beside mine, close enough that I could smell his cologne mixed with the faint scent of whiskey he'd been nursing in his study. We'd talk in low voices while Lee slept, heavens drifting from medical updates to personal territory. He told me about growing up poor, building his company from nothing, the wife who'd left when Lee was 2 because she couldn't handle the long hours and emotional distance. "I wasn't always this closed off," he admitted one night, staring at his sleeping son. "I used to laugh more, feel more. But business taught me that emotions are liabilities. Competitors exploit weakness, so I built walls. And now, I asked softly, now those walls feel suffocating. His eyes met mine. You've cracked them without even trying. My pulse quickened, but I forced myself to focus on adjusting Lee's blanket, needing the distraction. This was dangerous ground. The following evening, we stood side by side reviewing Lee's latest neurological reports. The improvement was remarkable. Brain activity spiking during stimulation, muscle responses growing stronger. As I pointed to a particular scan, Damon leaned closer to see and his fingers accidentally brushed against my hand. The contact lasted only a second before he jerked away. But my skin burned where he'd touched me. Sorry, he muttered, color rising in his cheeks. I didn't mean. It's fine, I interrupted, though my voice came out shakier than intended. My hands still tingled, hyper-aware of every nerve ending. Silence stretched between us, heavy and loaded. When I finally looked up, Damon was watching me with an intensity that stole my breath. The professional distance we'd carefully maintained was dissolving, and neither of us seemed capable of stopping it. You know what scares me most? He said quietly, each word deliberate. I've never depended on anyone, built everything myself, trusted no one completely. But you're different. You've brought life back into this house, made me remember what it feels like to hope, to connect with another person beyond surface pleasantries. I didn't know how to respond. Was this gratitude? Something more? My heart hammered an answer my mind refused to acknowledge. Before I could formulate a reply, Lee stirred. Both of us immediately shifted our attention to him, grateful for the interruption. The breakthrough came 3 days later during Lee's morning routine. I was giving him a sponge bath, talking quietly about the weather, when his eyelids fluttered open. Not the brief flutter from before, this time they stayed open for several seconds. His unfocused gaze found me first. Pupils struggling to adjust to the light. Confusion clouded his small face as he tried to make sense of his surroundings. Then his eyes shifted toward the doorway where Damon stood frozen, coffee cup halfway to his lip. Recognition sparked in Lee's expression. Papa? The word emerged barely audible, rough from months of disuse, but unmistakably clear. The coffee cup hit the floor, hot liquid spreading across expensive hardwood. Damon crossed the room in 3 strides, falling to his knees beside the bed. His hands cupped Lee's face with infinite gentleness, while tears streamed down his cheeks unchecked. I'm here, baby. Papa's here. His voice broke completely. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. Lee's eyes drifted closed again. The effort of staying conscious too much, but a small smile curved his lips before he slipped back into sleep. This time natural rest rather than Coma's prison. I backed toward the door, giving them privacy for this sacred moment. My chest felt tight with joy and something else, something bittersweet I couldn't quite name. In the corridor, I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes, allowing myself a moment to process. Lee was waking up. After 4 months of uncertainty, he was finally coming back. The medical miracle everyone had hoped for was actually happening, which meant my job here was ending. The realization hit like cold water. Once Lee recovered sufficiently, he'd need specialized therapists. Not a live-in nurse. The agency would reassign me. I'd pack my bags, return to my interrupted life. And this strange, intense chapter would close. And whatever was building between Damon and me, this confusing tangle of attraction and connection, would end before it truly began. My phone buzzed. A text from the agency, checking in on the Callaway case. Timeline for completion? I stared at the message, thumb hovering over the keyboard. What was I supposed to say? That Lee had just spoken his first word? That we'd achieved the breakthrough they'd hired me to accomplish? Instead, I typed, patient showing significant improvement. Will update within 48. Cowardly, perhaps. But I needed time to figure out how to let go of something I'd never intended to hold on to in the first place. When I finally returned to Lee's room an hour later, Damon was still there, sitting beside the bed with Lee's hand clasped between both of his. He looked up when I entered, and the raw vulnerability in his expression nearly undid me. He opened his eyes. Damon said unnecessarily, he saw me. He knew me. Yes, I agreed, managing a smile despite the ache in my chest. He's fighting his way back, just like we knew he would. Because of you. Damon stood, moving toward me with purpose. You made this possible. You refused to give up when everyone else, including me, had lost hope. You never lost hope, I corrected gently. You were just afraid to show it. He stopped directly in front of me, closer than appropriate, closer than safe. I need to tell you something, and I can't wait any longer. His hand lifted, hesitated, then carefully tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. These weeks with you have changed everything. You've become essential to us, to both of us. The thought of you leaving. He trailed off, but his eyes finished the sentence. Damon, I whispered, painfully aware of every inch between us. This situation, the intensity of it, sometimes trauma creates bonds that feel deeper than they are. You might be confusing gratitude with, don't. His thumb brushed my cheekbone, silencing me. Don't minimize what I feel. I know the difference between gratitude and this. What I feel when you walk into a room. How I count the hours until I can see you again. The way you've made me want to be better. Not just for Lee but for myself. My breath caught. This was real. Whatever was happening between us transcended simple appreciation or circumstantial connection. But I'm Lee's nurse. I managed even as my body leaned toward him involuntarily. There are boundaries, professional ethics. Then maybe you should stop being his nurse. His forehead nearly touched mine. Stay as something else. Someone else. Stay because you want to. Not because you're contractually obligated. The temptation to close that final distance, to let this moment tip into something irrevocable, was overwhelming. But Lee's soft breathing reminded me why I was really here. We should focus on Lee's recovery, I said, stepping back reluctantly. Everything else can wait. Disappointment flickered across Damon's face, quickly masked. Of course, you're right. But as I busied myself checking Lee's vitals, I felt Damon's gaze on me, heavy with unspoken promises. The walls between us had crumbled completely, leaving only the question of what we'd build in their place, and whether I had the courage to find out. The doctors officially declared Lee stable 5 days after he first opened his eyes. His cognitive functions were returning steadily. He could track movement, respond to simple questions with nods or headshakes, and his grip strength improved daily. They scheduled home-based physical therapy sessions and outlined a recovery timeline that stretched months into the future. My agency called with a new assignment, a pediatric case in Boston, starting in 2 weeks. I stared at the email confirmation, finger hovering over the acceptance button. This was what I did: move from case to case, help families through crises, then disappear before attachments formed. Clean, professional, uncomplicated. Except nothing about this situation was uncomplicated anymore. When I mentioned the new assignment to Damon that evening, his expression shuddered completely. The warmth that had been growing between us vanished behind the corporate mask he'd worn when we first met. I see, he said flatly. When do they need you? 2 weeks. But I can arrange for Lee's transition to a new care team. I'll make sure whoever takes over understands his specific needs. That won't be necessary. His tone could have frozen fire. We'll manage. The dismissal stung more than I'd expected. I'd hoped he might ask me to reconsider, to stay. Instead, he was already cutting ties, retreating behind his emotional fortress. The next 3 days were excruciating. We moved around each other like polite strangers, all the intimacy we'd built evaporating into formal exchanges about medication schedules and therapy appointments. Lee, awake for longer periods now, seemed confused by the sudden tension, his eyes tracking between us with worried uncertainty. I started packing on Thursday evening, folding clothes with mechanical precision while my chest felt hollow. This was the right decision. Professional. Appropriate. So why did it feel like I was tearing out part of myself? A knock interrupted my spiraling thoughts. Before I could respond, Damon entered without waiting for permission. His hair was disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly, tie loosened, eyes wild with something between panic and determination. You're actually leaving. Not a question. An accusation. My contract is complete, I replied, not trusting myself to meet his gaze. Lee doesn't need me anymore. He needs specialists, physical therapists, speech pathologists, professionals trained for long-term rehabilitation. Stop. He crossed the room in quick strides. Stop hiding behind professional obligations and tell me the truth. Do you want to leave? My hands stilled on the shirt I'd been folding. What I want doesn't matter. This was always temporary. That's not an answer. He positioned himself directly in my line of sight, forcing me to acknowledge him. Lee asks for you constantly. When he wakes up, he looks for you first. Do you know what he said yesterday? He asked if you were staying forever because you made Papa smile again. The words hit like a physical blow. Damon, please don't what? Tell you that you've become irreplaceable? That my son loves you? He stopped abruptly, jaw clenching. The unfinished sentence hung between us, vibrating with possibility. Say it, I whispered, finally meeting his eyes. If you're going to say it, then say it properly. His hands came up to frame my face, thumb stroking my cheekbones with devastating gentleness. I can't lose you. Not now. Not when I've just learned how to feel again. This started as a job, I said weakly. Even as I leaned into his touch, professional boundaries exist for reasons. What happens when the intensity fades? When normal life resumes and you realize I was just convenient, just there during a crisis? Do you honestly believe that? His forehead pressed against mine. That these feelings are circumstantial? That what I see when I look at you is gratitude instead of... He inhaled sharply. Instead of falling completely, terrifyingly in love with you? Time stopped. The confession hung in the air between us, raw and irreversible. You don't mean that, I breathed, though my heart screamed otherwise. You're exhausted, emotional, grateful that Lee is recovering. Damon. The correction came fierce and immediate. My name is Damon, and when I tell you I love you, I damn well mean it. Stop trying to rationalize my feelings away. His lips hovered millimeters from mine, close enough that I could feel his breath, warm and unsteady. If you don't feel the same, tell me now. Tell me I'm alone in this, and I'll let you go. I'll call the agency myself and wish you well. But if there's even the smallest chance you feel a fraction of what I do... He pulled back just enough to search my face, eyes burning with desperate hope. Every rational thought in my head screamed this was reckless. That I should leave, maintain my professional integrity, protect us both from potential heartbreak. But my heart had already made its choice weeks ago in quiet moments beside Lee's bed. In late-night conversations where Damon had let me see past his armor. I'm terrified, I admitted, voice barely audible, of staying, of leaving, of this being real and somehow losing it. Anyway, I came here to do a job, not to, my voice cracked, not to fall in love with both of you. The admission escaped before I could stop it, truth spilling out in a rush of vulnerability I hadn't intended. Damon's entire body relaxed, relief washing over his features. Then stay, not as Lee's nurse. Stay as part of our family. Stay because you want to wake up here tomorrow and the day after and every day following. What if it doesn't work? The question emerged small and scared. What if the reality can't live up to this intense beginning? Then we'll figure it out together, he said simply. Like everything else we've faced. I'm not promising perfect. I'm promising real, messy and complicated and worth fighting for. His hands slid from my face to my waist, pulling me closer. I know this is fast. I know it defies logic. But I've spent my entire adult life being logical, making calculated decisions, keeping everyone at arm's length. And it left me cold and alone even in a crowded room. Then you walked in and reminded me what it feels like to be fully alive. I wanted to argue, to list all the logical reasons this was insane. Instead, I closed the remaining distance between us and kissed him. The kiss was tentative at first, questioning. Then his arms tightened around me and everything else fell away. My doubts, my fears, the voice insisting this violated every professional boundary I'd ever respected. Nothing existed except the taste of him, the solid warmth of his body against mine, the rightness of this moment. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Damon rested his forehead against mine. Is that a yes? It's a, I'll unpack my bag and we'll figure this out, one day at a time. I replied, unable to suppress my smile. And probably I need to call my agency and quit because I'm fairly certain kissing my employer violates several contract clauses. His laugh rumbled through both our chests. I'll have my lawyers handle the paperwork. You just stay. I'm staying, I confirmed, the words feeling both terrifying and absolutely certain. From Lee's room down the hall we heard a small voice call out, "Ren? Papa? Where are you?" We looked at each other and smiled, then walked hand in hand toward the sound of the little boy who'd brought us together, ready to face whatever came next as something more than nurse and patient's father. As a family. I unpacked that night, hanging clothes back in the closet with hands that trembled slightly. The next morning, I composed a formal resignation email to the agency, citing personal reasons for declining future assignments. Their response was professionally disappointed but understanding. I'd completed my contract with the Callaways successfully, and they wished me well. When Damon saw me at breakfast, the relief in his eyes was answer enough to any lingering doubts. He didn't say anything, just reached across the table and squeezed my hand briefly before Lee rolled into the room in his wheelchair, physical therapist following behind. "Ren." Lee's face lit up, his speech still slightly slurred but improving daily. "You're still here. Papa said you might have to leave, but I told him you wouldn't. I told him you love us too much." My throat tightened. "Your papa was right to prepare you, but I decided to stay. If that's all right with you." "More than all right," Lee said, grinning. Then with the blunt honesty only children possess. "Are you going to be my other dad now? Because that would be really cool." Damon choked on his coffee. The therapist suddenly became very interested in checking her phone. I felt my face flame scarlet. "Lee," Damon managed after recovering. We haven't discussed it's more complicated than." "Why is it complicated?" Lee interrupted with perfect 7-year-old logic. "You like Ren. Ren likes you. I like both of you. That's how families work, right?" The therapist excused herself diplomatically, citing a need to prepare for the session. Once alone, Damon and I exchanged helpless looks across the table. "He's not wrong," I ventured carefully. "Though maybe we should take things slower than your son is proposing." "Noted," Damon said dryly, though his eyes sparkled with amusement. "We'll table the adoption paperwork for at least a month." Lee giggled, delighted by the adult awkwardness he'd created, and the moment passed into comfortable normalcy. The following weeks established new rhythms. I transitioned from medical caregiver to something else. Part family member, part support system, wholly integrated into their daily life. Lee's therapy sessions became routines we all participated in. Damon started coming home earlier, joining us for dinners that stretched late into the evening with conversation and laughter. One afternoon, while Lee napped between therapy sessions, he asked me the question I'd been half expecting. We were on the balcony, city sounds floating up from below, coffee cooling in our hands. "Can I ask you something personal?" Lee's voice carried unusual seriousness. "Of course. When I was unconscious, could I really hear everything? The doctor said it was possible, but I need to know what was real versus what my brain invented." I considered how to answer truthfully without overwhelming him. "What do you remember?" "Your voice, mostly. Telling me stories about Papa, about how worried he was. How much he loved me." Lee's eyes, so much like his father's, met mine. "And Papa's voice too, even though he thought I couldn't hear. He'd stand outside my door crying, telling me he was sorry, begging me to come back." That part felt real. "It was real," I confirmed quietly. "Every word." Lee nodded, absorbing this. "I also remember when everything changed, when Papa's voice stopped being just sad and started having something else in it. Hope, maybe? And it happened around the same time your voice changed too. Like both of you started being happier." The perceptiveness startled me. "You could hear that?" "Not hear exactly. More like feel. Energy shifts or something." He shrugged, searching for words. "I knew before I woke up that something had changed between you two. That you'd become important to each other, not just people taking care of me." "Does that bother you?" I asked carefully. "That things changed while you were recovering?" "Are you kidding? It's the best thing ever." His grin was pure mischief. "I was so worried Papa would be alone forever after Mom left. He pretended to be fine, but I knew he was sad. Then you showed up and made everything better." Before I could respond, he added with perfect nonchalance, "Plus I heard you tell Papa you loved him. Back when I was in the coma. So I know it's not new," just finally admitted. I nearly dropped my coffee cup. "You heard that?" "I heard lots of things. Like when Papa told you that you'd cracked his walls. And when you said you were falling for both of us." Lee's expression turned surprisingly mature. It's okay, Ren. I'm glad it happened. You make us happy. Both of us. The conversation ended when the physical therapist arrived, but Lee's words stayed with me. This child, who'd spent months trapped in his own mind, had been aware of everything, including the growing connection between his father and me. 2 months later, Lee took his first independent steps since the accident. We celebrated with dinner at his favorite restaurant, Lee beaming with pride between Damon and me in the booth. Watching them together, father and son, both so much healthier than when we'd met, filled me with contentment I'd never imagined possible. That night, after Lee fell asleep exhausted from the excitement, Damon led me to the rooftop terrace. City lights spread below us like scattered stars, the night air cool and perfect. I wanted to give you something, he said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Before you panic, it's not a ring. We've agreed to take things slow. Remember? Inside was a key on a simple chain. Not the apartment key I already had, but something else older, worn with age. This was my father's, Damon explained. He gave it to me before he died. Said it was to remind me that home isn't a place, it's the people you choose to let in. I want you to have it, as a promise that you'll always have a home with us, no matter what the future brings. My vision blurred with tears. Damon, you saved my son's life, he continued, voice rough with emotion. But more than that, you saved mine. You reminded me how to be human, how to open up, how to love without fear. These months with you have been the happiest of my adult life. I closed my fingers around the key. I came here lost, running from failure, convinced my career was over. Instead, I found a purpose I never knew I was searching for. You and Lee gave me a family when I didn't even realize I needed one. He pulled me close, arms wrapping around me securely. Below us, the city hummed with millions of separate lives. But up here, we'd created our own small universe. So we're really doing this? I asked against his shoulder. Building something permanent from this impossible beginning? We're already doing it, he corrected. Have been since the moment you promised the scared little boy you wouldn't give up on him. Everything since has just been catching up to that moment. We stood there as the night deepened around us, two people who'd found each other in the darkest circumstances, and chosen to build something beautiful from the wreckage. Lee slept peacefully inside, healing more completely every day, and I finally understood that sometimes the best things in life come from the moments we least expect, from tragedy transformed into hope, from professional distance collapsed into love, from three separate people becoming a family. This story had started with an accident, with fear and desperation and a child trapped between life and death. But it didn't end there. It transformed into something none of us could have predicted, a second chance for all of us. A family forged not by blood but by choice, and a love that had been worth every risk.